I think that's no. I mean, that's actually super interesting to think about it from that perspective. And actually, I hope that our sales team is listening because you may have just found a budget line item for DPE, which is really hard to find. So.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first podcast. I'm Bill.
And I'm Clarissa.
And we're the Control Freaks. And so this is probably a bit of a rough intro since we thought about practicing one, but we said let's just get going because we got an awesome individual here today. So quickly, I want to introduce Justin. So Justin Reock, a lead thinker in the developer productivity engineering movement. Now, some of you are asking, well, we'll call it DPE. Why DPE when we're talking about auditing with agility and governance engineering? Well, it's very key in my opinion, and I have this big professional crush on Justin and a lot of the stuff he talks about. Because what I love about DPE, and I'm going to let him chat here in a second, because as you all know, I can be endless in my words, is that it's really about measuring the engineering productivity of the development team, not some of them, what I'll colloquially, I can't pronounce that, say as some of the platform engineering mistake. So with that being said, Justin, welcome.
Bill, thanks so much. You know, I love talking with you, and nice to meet you, Clarissa. Thanks everybody for being here on the inaugural episode. By the way, very exciting. I am honored to be around for that. Yeah. So DPE, I think what was so appealing to me. So my background is in software development, like a lot of folks that have sort of gravitated towards this practice. And I think that's because we can empathize with a lot of the pains that are sort of addressed directly by DPE. And these are like endemic pains that I think are so painful that we've forgotten that they're pains. You know, these are things like build duration, test cycle duration, test flakiness, avoidable failures, infrastructure failures, and things like this, which when you start talking about them, developers just knowingly nod, yes, that's my life. Yes, that is bad. But no one's ever actually piped up and said, well, maybe we could do something about that. And so what I like about DPE is it says, yes, maybe we can do something about this. But it starts with the observation. Now, pre-show, we were talking a little bit about our mutual love for value stream management, VSM practice, right? And what I like about DPE is that it takes a very similar philosophy. Let's see where we're at. Let's observe the internal value stream of the local experience of a developer writing code at their laptop and interacting with CI. Let's map that part of the value stream by exploiting the fact that we own the build tool. So we're closer to that experience than any other piece of software. So where other software like CI, for instance, is maybe a little blind to what's happening at the local experience, a build tool is not, right? And it also understands what's going on in CI. So being able to gather that data, again, build duration, test cycle duration, test flakiness, avoidable failures, this kind of thing, allows us to paint a picture of the developer portion of the value stream, easily identify the bottlenecks and impediments to productivity, and then apply, and this is where the engineering word comes in, apply a reasonable technology solution to fix that part of the developer's toolchain. If you will forgive a really bad metaphor that actually just works, right? But it's terrible. I need to come up with a better one. Where traditional productivity management might focus on the driver of a car, DPE focuses on the car, the road that car is driving on, the conditions of the air, the weather, the friction, all of these components that are necessary to the driver, but that aren't actually in the brain of that driver.
Justin, that is really helpful because I'm on the audit, the GRC risk management side, and when Bill brought the proposal to have you on the show, I was like, I have no idea what developer productivity engineering is. So that analogy, I know you said it was tired and old, but it helps for those of us who aren't quite as familiar with it.
That's why I can't quit it.
Yeah, I want to make right off the bat, I'm going to make a political statement. You talked about the value stream, and you did not use the word software supply chain when people talk about the build. And so Clarissa's probably like, okay, I don't know what's going on. And recently, I was going to write about this, where if you look up the Wikipedia definition of software supply chain, it's the continuous integration and deployment tool chain is what people are talking about. But Justin, I love how you stated around the value stream and looking at from the value stream perspective, because my background is actually formal logistics and operations, and the supply chain is the exchange of goods between different entities. Now, what happens between your four walls is your value stream. How do you bring an input, add value, then to create output? So like there's nowhere really to go with that one. I just wanted to say something like I pointed out the words you used and like the perspective you had on that one. I just wish the industry would adopt that more than the software supply chain, because software supply chain is real. It's just talking about a different concept of there's a different area that it needs to be applied to. But I take my side aside. So like as you're looking at it, as we get back to what you're talking about in the DPE, one thing that you talk about the build. So the injection of value really in this value stream, one of the parts of the injection is what we like the build system is where this manifests. And so as you talked about like with testing, build times, also if there's errors, you see that at build. When we start to think about governance writ large, do you think that that's the proper place for something like this to happen as well? Or are there different areas in the value stream around software development that this should happen?
No, I'm glad you are getting right into this, and far be it from me to disrupt a multi-billion-dollar industry, but I do think that the right place is in the build and not in CI. Because if you think about any other type of supply chain, and more importantly, chain of custody, right? What's happening between that software artifact and the build on that developer's laptop, and then the push to CI or the move out to some artifact server? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, right? All these solutions that are here to do our Salsa or our Dast or SAST or any of those things, they don't live in the build, right? They either live in the dependency chain, which is related to the build, but it's still external to it, right? Or they live out in CI, right? Where some of that other automation takes place because people want all this work to happen out on the cloud. But there's a massive blind spot. So I've actually had this discussion with like Steve Chin from JFrog and other folks who are, part of the build, and we've talked about like, hey, there's a massive hole here that nobody's talking about, and we as build system providers have probably a responsibility to do something about this. And as far as I can tell, like maybe Sonatype is really the only one who's kind of going down this path right now and thinking about it in terms of like, well, how about instead of reactively scanning things to see if we mess something up, how about we cut something off right at the point that we're pulling in dependencies in the first place? And we have all this cool new technology that we could use to validate that, like, for instance, distributed ledger. Guess what? Blockchain is not just for NFTs and cryptocurrency, right? There's actually way cooler stuff we could do with it. And this is one possibility, is validating genuine source code by turning that source code into a token and putting it on a distributed ledger and validating it at the point that the dependency is downloaded.
Justin, a couple things you said there I want to kind of link back to, because I think about how this fits in with the movement that Bill and I are leading as well. Is these are going to be my words, not your words, but I translate things into audit talk. So what you just talked about there, I see as proactive risk management. So you said instead of scanning to find out where we have problems and then fixing it there, bringing it back to the beginning and preventing it from being a problem in the first place. Bill, I think about that. I think about your talk at the DevOps Enterprise Summit this year of policy as code. That's kind of the point there, is not waiting till something gets into production and then fixing it, but setting it up so that it doesn't get into production and cause problems. Just throwing in some connections, as I see all of these things have a lot of benefits. And really, when you think about that, again, what I'm going to call proactive risk management, a lot of organizations can't afford to wait till it becomes a problem and then try to fix it and add that to their backlog of things to fix while they're still trying to do things. This concept of being more proactive is really what a lot of organizations need in this environment right now.
So what do you have there? Proactive risk management. So if for the technicians listening here, the software engineers are going to listen today to this. If they wanted to co-op with their internal auditors and assurance, they basically, when they talk about DPE and say they're pitching this to an executive, proactive risk management, it's DPE to the tech engineers, but to the internal audit geeks, it's proactive risk management. So we're actually finding a bit of an overlap. And if we're talking about how we're doing it here, and maybe I'm like pulling this too far, but like, let's use the build process. Let's use the build point as a way to interject proactive risk management. Is that like I almost feel like I'm bringing two. I mean, maybe those circles are already together, but like in my mind, like hold on a second, there's this big overlap here. where we now have this hook into the development process that brings in the rest of the organization beyond the developers. Am I interpreting that correctly? Like, either of you, like, am I wrong? I mean, what do you
No, I
think?
think that makes sense. And I think part of what, as organizations go through this and start, and I'm going to use the term shifting it left. So we're really shifting that risk management left and earlier in the process. Um, they're going to have to bring their auditors and their risk management and their GRC professionals along that journey with them, because otherwise, here's what's going to happen is you're going to change the way you're doing things. The auditors are going to come in and say, okay, show me where you're scanning to find these things and fix these things. And you're like, well, we're not, because you're doing it earlier, right? So you're preventing it before it happens. The auditors will come in and say, show me that. You say, we're not. And then like, well, we're going to write up a finding for you. And that finding is going to say you need to scan for things, but that's going to be duplicative. So what we've talked about a couple, Bill and I have had a couple conversations on this, but where my movement is more, it's auditing with agility, and it's bringing your auditors in, not keeping them super siloed, maintain that independence and objectivity, but helping them really understand how you're managing risks, how you're managing your business, so that they can provide assurance in those areas that make sense. So you don't want to know whether or not you're scanning. You already know you're not scanning. You want to know whether what you're doing up front in the build process is doing what you want it to do and what you need it to do. And that's where your auditors can come in and help you and provide that assurance there. But you've got to bring them along. You've got to bring them in early and often.
I think that's no. I mean, that's actually super interesting to think about it from that perspective. And actually, I hope that our sales team is listening, because you may have just found a budget line item for DPE, which is really hard to find. But I think that the earlier part about this, the idea that that this is effectively what you're calling sort of proactive risk management, or the fact that we catch this sort of earlier in the cycle. It also means that we could produce the type of artifact that somebody would be looking for, like an SBOM, software bill of materials, or something like that. That that would be the currently like expected artifact to get created to show the auditors that everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason that SBOM couldn't be created during the build, as opposed to the result of a scan. It's the same data. It's literally like the way that this whole thing works, right? Developers don't write nearly any of their own code anymore, right? When I came up in the olden days, it was like a big deal if you spent a weekend cranking out like 100,000 lines of code. Like, that was a badge of courage. Now, anybody who would do that gets laughed at. You're like, why did you waste your time? Like, we have all these open source libraries and frameworks and things that do all the things that you used to have to do by hand. Now you can just take them. Of course, the flip side to this is that we've now created a whole new attack vector. If somebody can poison the well, we're really in trouble.
Yep.
But we could detect poison in the well at CI after we've already created our artifact, or we could detect the poison in the ingredients that we're putting into the artifact. But we can still list those ingredients at either stage. So I think you could produce something that an auditor is interested in seeing, just from a different source. The problem is, again, it would take all these build tool people to work together, and I've learned it's actually really hard to get them to do that. So...
Well, actually,
And Justin,
let's
I
take
think
that
about it too from it's not just what the auditors want to see. It's what you want to see too. So you want to know that you're not poisoning the well. So a lot of people want to do things because they think the auditors will want to see this. I challenge people to think about it in a way of, what do you want to know? If you're accountable for this product or this process or this business, what do you need to feel good that the well isn't poisoned, or you've identified the poison before you even put it in your well? And then yes, that should be what the auditors are looking for as well. But try to
Bill,
take the auditors out of it for a minute.
I want you to jump in, Bill, because I could sense you had a good point there. But the two things I want to point out: first of all, it may not be a choice. There is an interpretation of this White House executive mandate that software developers could actually be held personally liable, even as part of an LLC or other corporation, for knowingly releasing exploitable code in a production release. They could be held personally liable under this mandate. So whether they care or not may be moot. They may have to care soon. But the second part is they really should care. I had this conversation. I brought up Sonatype earlier. I'm a big fan of their tech still, and Steve Poole is their lead advocate, and we have had some great conversations. And one of the things that we talked about actually on the Beautiful podcast, on Josh Long's podcast, was the fact that it's a great name, Beautiful Podcast. The third largest GDP in the world, and this is a little sobering, is currently the decentralized network of cyber criminals. It is estimated at about a $7 trillion collective GDP in terms of money gotten from malware scams and identity theft, ransomware, and all these other attack vectors. It's growing somewhere between a 40 to 50% click year over year, which means that by 2026, I think is what Steve said. I can't do math, I'm an American engineer, but we are set to have the globally distributed network of cyber criminals with more purchasing power than the US.
Wow.
So the largest GDP in the world is on track to be the decentralized network of cyber criminals. So it makes me question whether I'm in the wrong team. Just kidding. But we should care about this because
Yes.
these are not like, you know, cool, fun little geeks like rocking out in their mom's basement or something. I mean, we're talking about drug cartels. We're talking about terrorist organizations. You know, we're talking about organized criminal organizations that are using the internet and other means of cyber criminals to fund their operations. So, you know, it is a staggering statistic. But then also, these are not like harmless 12-year-olds. We're talking about some of the worst examples of humanity profiting off of this and now set to become the largest GDP in the world.
That's that right there. Would you say that's nuts and astonishing? And I like this is the first time I hear that, and like it doesn't surprise me. I'm talking and thinking at the same time, so there's a lot of stuttering that's going to happen. But
That's why we get along.
You said one thing that you said is really making me think here, and like Clarissa, this would be interesting too. And when I think about audit and assurance, and we'll go about the insure versus assure here in a second, because like I always talk about this ever since Clarissa educated me on insurance, not the drink, but to insure versus to assure. But put that aside for a second. Engineering. Like software engineering was a term that was termed, was it 68, 67 by Margaret? What was Margaret's last name? I think that was her. It was one of the women that were working on the Apollo. And They used the term software engineering, she did, as a way to level up what at that time, the software developers were doing with the proper engineers. When I say proper engineers, these are people like, if you think about the PE, the professional engineering certification, you got to go to a certified school. You got to take a test. What's interesting and what I'm seeing here, and like the reason you do that, and now Clarissa, this comes into the risk side, because
Margaret
that's
Hamilton.
a level of Margaret Hamilton. Okay, so it was Margaret Hamilton. All right.
I'm talking and
so
thinking too.
Is it? I think it was Margaret Hamilton. I could have the wrong name, but I believe it was Margaret Hamilton that did that. But like what you see right now, one thing you're pointing out is there's a reason that exists. That exists simply because the practice of software engineering is not like the traditional practice of engineering. I'll say it's vendor driven, but I'll put that to the side because I can get in trouble for that one. But there's no real standard to assure versus insure that people have the skills to, like you talked about, like people are going to have to care. As a professional engineer, like an architect, when I got my house built, I went to an architect. He put a stamp on it. If something happens to my house, if he miscalculated or something like that, there's legal liabilities. What I find interesting is a lot of people that name architect and engineer, and like we've gone off like from DPE, and I want to bring it back down, but like are not liable for the things they put out there. Actually, quite the opposite. The open source movement has made it such that I'm going to expose you to this and I have no liability to it. Now, I don't want to go into the muddy pit of whether, because it's some of the things that happen with EU and whatnot. I want to stay out of the muddy pit of that one right now. But I just, as you talked about that, like people should care. You think about it, the proper engineering, not software engineering, the real physical engineering domains have an assurance function that is mandated by the governments to ensure that what they're doing is not a liability to society, yet the software does not have it. I didn't think we'd get that deep in our first episode here. I thought we'd just talk we'd overlap around build systems or something, but like what you just talked about there is very deep, because if you think about and I want to get back to fundamentals, I'm very big on first principles. Like this is the first principles, the most fundamental assumptions here. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm going a little off track here. But like Clarissa, I went down a little track. We're talking about this, and Justin brought this up, and like the things that are coming out. Like I am at a loss for words on like how to turn this in. But like I feel like it's all about risk management. And like from your perspective, what you hear Justin and I talking about right now, and especially from the background in a big corporation, how should audit conduct themselves to be a contributing and caring partner in this area?
So partnership. If I had to sum it up in one word, it's partnership. If you think about internal audit's role, they are part of the same organization as developers, as the risk managers, as everyone else in that organization. So while they are independent from their reporting structure and they do have to maintain objectivity, their role is to help set that organization up for success. And that's something that a lot of people kind of don't think about unless you're in auditing. A lot of people see the auditors as they're here to tell us everything we did wrong and make sure we're in compliance with things. And really, our job as auditors is to provide that assurance that, Justin, what you and your team are doing, and you want this to be working this way, I can bring a fresh perspective and tell you, yes, it is working that way, or no, it's not, and here's where it's not working. And we also provide value through that advice. So yes, it's working, and it could be even better if you did this, because you and your team are in the weeds doing the things. So it is all about partnership, because I can't do my job as an auditor without knowing what it is you and your team are doing. You can't do your job as effectively without that fresh perspective, taking a step back from things and saying, yes, it's working, or hey, have you thought about this? So really, Bill, it is all about that partnership.
So just with the developer experience, so developer experiences tends to be focused, and DevX tends to be focused on the developer. Clarissa, you talk about partnership. Like, are we missing something in developer experience where it's just so narrowly focused on the developer that it's not developed? Like, is there a difference between the developer and the development, or versus mint experience? Or, I mean, are we hitting on something here? What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you said it, I don't never heard it put that way before, but like the process of creating software is multidisciplinary and involves lots of departments beyond the folks who are just, taking the raw material code and creating throughput from it with some sort of application. That partnership has traditionally been difficult. I want to go back to something you said, Bill, because I just had this conversation actually, that in any other industry, there are requirements for things like continuing education, right? Or making sure that you're keeping your licenses up to date, right? These things are just realities, and somehow we've been able to lazily skirt around it. I mean, we've gotten away with a lot. Let's be clear, okay? I mean, like over the last couple of decades, software has become, the king, queen maker, right? And as a result, and it's happened really quick. And we skipped past a lot of other stuff, I think, because digital velocity moves so quickly, right? I mean, we're not constrained by the physical world in the ways that so many other industries are. And I know we're getting down to like the real brass tacks here, but like that's okay. It's fun. I think that because of this, because everybody was so enamored of what we could do, and because it's hard. And one of my favorite comparisons to make is like the Pythagorean school of geometry in ancient Creton in 600 BC and people who write code now. Because the school of sacred geometry in 600 BC was esoteric knowledge that not everyone could understand, but was chiefly responsible for creating infrastructure, aqueducts, an entire civilization and an infrastructure for that civilization, but very few people actually understood the nuance of it. Now, this was exploited. Pythagoras died in exile. A lot of people don't know that his life ended very tragically, right? That the nobility in Creton wanted to know what the hell was going on in that school, and Pythagoras wouldn't tell them. And it actually split his school into like two inner circle, outer circle to try to like, obfuscate what was happening in there in a lot of different ways. And he was run out of Creton, died in exile, like half his school was murdered, all because he refused to tell people about what was really going on with geometry. So now you fast forward now, what do we have? We got infrastructure that people love. We're sharing 1 billion cats a day on our phones. That makes people really happy. But in order to do that, we had to build this whole infrastructure. And despite the fact that, we've gone through that, everyone should learn how to code. No, they shouldn't. And like everyone should be a developer. No, they really shouldn't. Like all this stuff, you still have a small core of people, despite it being 70% of the global GDP, digitally transformed now. Still a small group of people. So no, Bill, I think we're hitting on something very important here. I think we've been able to, in this industry, skip past a lot of stuff, a lot of cruft and boring stuff that other people haven't had to skip past. As a result, the software development organization sits at a different lunch table than other parts of the business. And because of that, there's often this, I don't know, friction to being able to break those silos down because of just the stark difference in what we do in our day-to-day work.
Okay.
I probably just pissed a lot of people off. Sorry about that.
I mean, we're not worried about that. I do that on a daily basis.
Hello, I'm an auditor.
All right, I'm in good company.
But what you just said there, it is get that. So developer experience. So as we talk like the foundation of like what Clarissa and in your movement with the developer experiences, we're talking about a lot of this is like a lot of people moving in an unconstrained way. Now I can hear a lot of like Luddites and other people in the background like, yeah, if we were constrained, we wouldn't have this level of innovation. Let's put that aside. Let's just look at for what it is, right? It's a lot of unconstrained movement that moves very quick. It brings value, but also there's a counter side where it brings like the third, as you said, the third largest, what was the word
decentralized global GDP? Yeah,
decentralized global GDP as a counterforce to it, right? Which is interesting. And we start thinking about auditing assurance, right here, developer experience, and part of our goal is to work with the community to say, all right, how can you change the way tech and GRC interact? It almost feels like we're getting to something here. I'm not quite sure what it is, but through something like developer productivity engineering, the developer experience, I'll use this term development experience as well to bring the other people in.
Like it.
I mean, how does I'm going to put it back to you two, Clarissa and Justin, because what I love is great about this is in the pre-show we're talking about this. Justin has a background, but not correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, you have a background writing software, but as far as writing really highly regulated software, you've been tangential to that. Is that
true?
Pretty
Very
correct?
True. Yes. Yeah.
And Clarissa has been tangential to the actual process. If I remember the history right, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. Your first touch with technology is when you became the auditor for the IT group at one of the companies you worked for. Is that
Yep.
correct? So up until 4
Yeah,
or 5
I have no
years
technology
ago.
background. I've been in the technology audit role for 5 years, and that's my technology. So it enables me to ask these really dumb questions that we asked in the pre-show and everything.
That's bold, though. That's awesome. It's a big world. That's awesome. Yeah.
Learn new things every day.
But divergent experiences, harmonious, but divergent experiences. How would you both solve? Let's say the problem to solve is that $7 trillion decentralized GDP. How, between developer experience and auditing with agility, can we better solve this such that we can at least try to maintain the value creation of unrestricted we'll call it the Pythagorean situation, right? How do we maintain the unrestricted Pythagorean situation benefits while reducing the negative side effects? So take that from 7 trillion to ideally to be 0, but we know that will never happen in reality. So how do you reduce that significantly such that it's not a significant global topic? I'm going to pass it over to you two. How Let's solve world hunger right now.
Go for it, Clarissa.
Oh no.
Well, I'll start with my part of it.
Talk about being put on the spot.
Right.
All right, let's see. What can we do here? No, there's no problem. No problem. This ain't no
Bill,
thing.
your payback's coming.
What is it, 10 o'clock on a Wednesday? It's time. It's Thursday even. So, I don't even know what day it is. How are we supposed to solve this problem? So,
it's Friday Eve.
Close to Friday Eve. I like that. So let me talk about that from the developer experience part first, and then Clarissa, you please fill in. Keep me honest around the auditing stuff because I know some stuff. I mean, one of the first business software I had to work on was billing software for what would become a Sarbanes-Oxley compliant company, but this was 20 years ago. So what ends up happening is that there ends up being some sort of automation technology solution, something that automates this process of scanning, auditing, and then creating the artifact that shows, okay, here were the things that came into the artifact, or here were the pieces of software that went in, and now that we have this bill of materials, we can call ourselves compliant with the way that we created this artifact. What automation usually ends up meaning is that the onus gets put back on the developer, right? Mm-hmm. Somehow, some way, the developer is going to have to be responsible for some new thing. And like we mentioned earlier, with the White House mandate, the executive order, there is again now the possibility that the developer could be held personally liable for knowingly releasing. Now there's a whole legal, quagmire of knowingly releasing and that kind of thing. And it may not even be interpreted that way. Point is, though, the developer's usually going to end up having to do some extra work that they don't want to do because there's already a bunch of stuff that they have to put up with that they don't want to put up with. And now this is like another thing. And most developers, not all, don't know or want to care about these aspects outside of their craft, right? What makes us tick and what we feel very good about is that we're lucky to do this thing that we love to do, which is write code. It makes our brain feels good, and it's exciting, and we like the feedback and all these things. So the last thing we want is some additional piece of toil to take us away from the work that we actually enjoy doing. Now, I said before, we're a very spoiled crew, right? Oh, I'm sorry, there's aspects of work you don't enjoy? Wow. But the truth is there is so much money in this industry and so many options for developers that, yes, good engineers really don't have to do any of the crap that they don't want to do. They'll just walk and go to another company if the experience is that bad, which comes back to our opportunity for DPE and why this is part of also a talent and retention story. Now, what can we do? So regardless of whether developers want to or don't want to do this, and if the mandate comes out, and maybe it will, and now we're personally responsible for this stuff, we are going to have to think about it. We are going to have to do this. Developer productivity engineering is a nice foil to this, right? So it's like, all right, I might have to introduce a couple new steps to the software packaging process or the build, or you have to use some new library or some new auditing plugin or something. But on the flip side, we're going to reduce your build speed from 15 minutes down to 30 seconds. So you're still going to end up way in the black here in terms of the overall additional toil that is part of your job, right? So this, though, and Clarissa, to your point earlier about partnership, right? Mm-hmm. This is an avenue. This is something that if this mechanism is well understood by both parties, it can become leverage to say, okay, well, developers, I know you're not super happy about doing this, but guess what? We're throwing in DPE practice, so actually your overall toil and frustration is going to go down.
And going back to partnership, Justin, you mentioned silos earlier as well. Go back to partnerships, break down those silos. And like I just mentioned that I don't have a background in tech, but I audit technology. I don't need to know everything about technology. That's what the developers and the technology product owners do. I leverage their knowledge. And it's not that I know nothing about technology. I'm just never going to know as much as an engineer on whatever it is that we're auditing this day or this month. And same with, I wouldn't expect the developers to know everything about what are the regulatory requirements and what are all of these other pieces that they need to know. But I do expect them to have the conversation with the people that have that. So break down the silos, partner not just with auditors, but I also don't know all the regulations either. It's another kind of misconception about auditors is that we're all compliance, we know the laws, we know all of these things. Not necessarily. That's what the compliance function is for. So that's where bringing in kind of your GRC and risk partners are. So creating a partnership with all of the people who have those unique strengths, that unique piece of knowledge, to where you get the entire picture together. And yes, the developer is still going to be accountable for things that they're probably not thrilled about, but they're not having to do it alone. They have that knowledge from those other individuals and can bounce things off of them. And hey, I'm doing this. How does that match with what this requirement is? And internal audit, what fresh perspective do you have? And what am I not thinking about? Or how could I do this even better? So really, yeah, partner with people across the organization that have the strengths that you don't have, and absolutely break down those silos.
I think it's really interesting that you bring up this subject of like not all auditors know every bit of the audit law. Like just like any lawyer couldn't hope to understand all of law that's ever been written. But the same is true for development. This is interesting because like these are some like human, maybe empathetic anchors. I don't like where because as developers. Most of us are not polyglot developers, or if we are, we know maybe 3 or 4 languages, but there's some assumption, like for instance, one of the funniest things is when somebody expects me to be able to fix their iPhone. because I've been doing software development. I have no idea how an iPhone works. I'm an Android guy. I've never owned an iPhone in my life, right? I have my Mac, right? It's a little different, right? But they just expect, oh, you should know how to fix this. I don't know. It's an Android. I don't know anything about it, right? But it's the same thing, right? There's a multiple galaxies of information out there about this industry, and all of us, even the best of us, even the very best of us, only have a patch that we really understand.
Yep.
So,
Makes it this far, and so you'd be like, and I was talking to somebody the other day about like, can you write that? I was using I have an iPhone, so I know nothing about an Android, and I was doing some of the apps like, can you? And it was even on an iPhone, like, how do you do this? And I'm like, just because I write the software doesn't mean I know how to use other people's software.
it's true too. Yeah.
There's something like I feel like we're probably running too short in this conversation for it. But the Webner-Fechner law. You were talking about something here, and it's WBERFECHNER. There's something for a future conversation. I'm not going to think out loud on this one because it's completely not there, but check out the Weber-Fechner law. And as you're talking about developer experience, especially some of the stuff with auditing with agility, I wonder how some of this stuff plays in. Because basically what you talked about with the change of the car, like looking at it differently instead of the driver, and you're looking at the car and the environment, Weber-Fechner is basically thinking about how human perception, more specifically the relation between actual change and visual stimulus, are in that perceived change. Yeah. So, like, for example, this is the famous economic thing in this. And as you're talking through this, we're talking about cooperating. There's also like the different backgrounds and the perspectives. And somehow I feel like this all fits in together where, like, Justin, we're going to say, for example, you are a multi-billionaire, right? And you have just been given $1 million. Yeah, you're a multi-billionaire. You've just been given $1 million. Most likely you're going to be like, okay, that's cool, but like you're not going to have a big stimulus. Whereas like Clarissa does extremely well. But all of a sudden, it's not multi-billion, but somebody gives her $1 million and like it's going to be whoof. And it's the difference is like you both got the same amount of utility, $1 million. But the perceptual difference is huge. You have a lower perceived difference, then Clarissa has a higher perceived difference. So I feel like a lot of something we're talking about here, like just thinking through, like there's a Weber-Fechner law. So,
no, for me, it's like when I find $5 in my jeans. It's like the same thing. It's like, holy crap, that makes my whole week. You know what I mean?
Have you advantage of doing laundry? If I find it, I keep it.
That's right.
See, it could be like a present to your future self. Just start like randomly stuffing $20 bills in like your jean pockets, like.
Start doing that
with a little note that says you're exactly
self-care.
Justin, you mentioned something earlier when you were first describing some of the goals of DPE. You said things like empathize with the pains, even those that we've forgotten were actually pains. So developers be like, yes, this is a pain, but just nodding our heads like, yeah, we know we have to deal with that anyways. One of those pains for some, if not most developers, is probably audit. And I can imagine somebody, yep, here come the auditors. Yeah, we know we're going to have to do this. But I would love to get people to start thinking of it instead of this is a pain that we have to deal with, but switch that mindset to not even just, yes, the auditors are coming. How can we have them help us alleviate some of these other pains? But being proactive and calling them, again, proactive risk management, proactively calling the auditors of we are going through this change, or we've been dealing with something that has been a struggle. Can you come in and help us with those things? So I see a lot of similarities and some of those foundational elements that you were talking about with developer productivity engineering and the auditing with agility movement and GRC movement.
No, totally. There's something here. I think there's an opportunity maybe to reframe, right? Because it's like, for instance, I mean, a lot of developers don't know this story about the global decentralized network of cyber criminals, and then even further, like we say that word cyber criminal, but it just conjures up this very harmless and innocuous image of some like hacker in a hoodie. But that's not the truth at all. Like, I mean, we really are talking about organized crime. We are talking about state level, regime level bad actors, in these situations. So I think, like, first of all, raising awareness about the problems, the deeper and maybe more globally impactful problems that are being solved by auditing. I think that, developers are smart people. We are reasonable people. We just happen to be myopic. We happen to have a lot of tunnel vision. It helps us in the way that we do our job, you know? I mean, there's a whole class of stimulants out there that just help you with your tunnel vision, that are marketed specifically to developers to be more myopic, to be better at your job, right? I mean, it's like there's a whole industry around this, right? So, like, I think that reframing it to like, no, we're helping you fight the bad guys, right? Like, we're in this together in a partnership to make sure that people, this craft that you love so much, isn't exploited by the worst actors in society. I think you could start there and appeal to people's lizard brain a little bit, and then say, let's do this together. Let's go be good guys together. And then, I mean, this conversation has been enlightening for me. I've never thought about the fact, because I am one of those. We're like, oh, you're an auditor, you must know everything about it. Well, it's just how it is, because
Nope.
it's just a relevancy. But this is how the human mind works, right? We compartmentalize things, we stereotype, like it's part of how we are efficient, right? But now this has broken this down. I have this weird interest now in how complex this law might be, because it reminds me of the fact that I love learning about complex things, right? Even though this is different than what I do in my day to day. I think there are some very human inroads that have just maybe not been explored between, these two parts of the industry, but that if we actually get to talking, we have quite a bit in common, and we're solving really difficult Gordian problems together, and we're doing it for a really virtuous reason.
So let me ask this, so then to wrap this up on where you're going with there, I'll ask both of you. So what are our listeners 3 things? Justin, actually, Clarissa, start with you, with Justin. So Clarissa, based on what are 3 things you think our auditing and GRC community members could do to better cooperate and draw things like, we talk about developer experience, but what could they do to then basically, I mean, is it helping developers be myopic, or on the other side, reducing the negative side effects of myopathy from the development aspect? And stealing your words there, so like closing out, what are 3 things you think that the auditing organization could do and GRC to help?
So empathize. I think overall would just bring the human element to it. So empathize with your clients. Be vulnerable. So let them know we don't know everything, and we don't expect you to know everything either. And then partner. So really look for that partnership opportunity. Recognize that we are humans. We have our different strengths, but we are much stronger if we partner together rather than if we try to go about this in our separate silos.
All right, I like that. Empathize and partner. Justin, for developers and the tech staff listening, what do you think 3 things they can do, especially through the lens of developer experience and DPE, that could help them bridge the gap and become more productive, like a 1 + 1 = 3 with their GRC and auditors?
Wow. Yeah. So I think, like, first, we talked earlier about trying to come up with some sort of arbitrage around, like, okay, you're spending more time over here doing this thing, but we can reduce your overall load. I think making sure that we're framing this as like part of a fuller conversation, that we are adding a responsibility, but we're also taking away things that you don't like to do to try to make up for that. I think that we should. So I don't know what you would call it, arbitrage, maybe. And then, like, so number 2, I would say, and this is an indictment, but I'll say it about myself, right? We have a toxic mentality that may not be held by every individual member of the industry, but that collectively is held. That somehow we really feel that at the end of the day, we probably could solve every single problem in the entire galaxy using some kind of software somewhere. Which means that at the end of the day, we could do anything, really, if we wanted to. But that's very Dunning-Kruger. It's very false. And it's also a little bit toxic. And so I would say, I think it's a good thing for anybody in this industry to remind yourself that you are part of a team, right? Whether you want to be or not. Down to the folks who make sure that your paycheck gets into your bank every week so that you can buy your video games or do all the great things that you like to do. So I would say maybe pull off that pedestal a little bit. And I'll say it about myself, right? I have to catch myself. There are times where I'm like, oh, I could use an app to solve it. No, you can't. No, you can't. That's a problem that if it was that easy, the problem would be solved already. So, and then finally, I would say I would echo the third one, that those 2 things will make partnership a lot easier.
Mhm.
So,
I like it. The valley-colored glasses. I'll just leave it there.
oh, it's
Sometimes
great.
just tip those valley-colored glasses up.
Mm.
Justin, thank you very much for your time
Oh,
today.
my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
This was great.
A lot of our folks that want to follow you, LinkedIn, Twitter. What's the best way? What's the best way to keep up to date with what Justin's doing these days?
LinkedIn's the best right now. Yeah. Twitter, X, all those things. We're all trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. But LinkedIn has been, that's solid. And I've always been on the sellout side of this anyway, so it's fine. No. But LinkedIn is easy. And then we didn't talk about this yet. But my last day at Gradle was actually last week. Very, very proud of what we've been able to do around building an advocacy team and a message that I think is really scalable. And we did that. I came in to do what I wanted to do, which was can we coalesce this into something that we could scale out using a team? We did that. We built the team. They're out doing it. It's great. I can't talk about where I'm going yet, but please stay tuned. It is within this productivity and experience space, and I really can't wait to announce it. I'm very excited about it. So,
Well, congratulations. More to come for sure.
thank you.
Everybody, thank you, bud. And again, I'm Bill. We're
I'm
going to try this
Clarissa.
outro. There we go. And here's our tagline, right? Be a freak.
Be a freak, not a foe.
There we go.
I thought we were going to say that together.
Yeah, we'll try it on the count of three.
Clean
Ready?
up and put this-
1. Yeah, we're going to do it. 1, 2, 3. Be a
Be a freak, not a foe.
Not a foe.
Dang
There
it,
we
we
go.
didn't-
Oh, I feel honored.